ज्योति स्टेनो टाइपिंग कॉलेज में आप सभी का स्वागत है बच्चों। कैसे हैं आप सभी? उम्मीद करता हूँ अच्छे होंगे। ये 80 WPM इंग्लिश 80 WPM डिक्टेशन क्लास है। ये CRPF के लिए और SSC के लिए बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट डिक्टेशन है। इसको अच्छे से लिखें और लिखने के बाद जो बच्चे टाइप करके अपनी एक्यूरेसी जानना चाहते हैं तो वेबसाइट है हमारी jyotisstenotypingcollege.com। जैसे इसको खोलोगे तो इस तरह का ऐसे सरफेस नजर आएगा। एडमिशन फॉर गवर्नमेंट जॉब ओनली बटन पे क्लिक करोगे, यहाँ अपना रजिस्ट्रेशन कर सकते हो और रजिस्ट्रेशन करने के बाद स्टेनो का कोर्स जो है मंथली या ईयरली जैसा भी लेना चाहो ले सकते हो। बेसिक से भी इसमें क्लास दे रखी हैं, तो जैसे बेसिक वाले भी इससे पढ़ सकते हैं। अब मैं पढ़ने जा रहा हूँ 80 WPM स्पीड की डिक्टेशन। इसमें जो टोटल वर्ड्स हैं बच्चों वो है 820 वर्ड है। डिक्टेशन स्टार्ट आफ्टर 5 सेकेंड। द इम्पैक्ट ऑफ कोरोना वायरस pandemic on India has been largely disruptive in terms of economic activity as well as a loss of human lives. Almost all the sectors have been adversely affected as domestic demand and exports sharply plummeted, with some notable exceptions where high growth was observed. An attempt is made to analyze the impact and possible solutions for some key sectors. Food and agriculture, since agriculture is the backbone of the country and a part of the government announced essential category, the impact is likely to be low on both primary agricultural production and usage of agro inputs. Several state governments have already allowed free movement of fruits, vegetables, milk, etc. Online food grocery platforms are heavily impacted due to unclear restrictions on movements and stoppage of logistics vehicles. RBI and Finance Minister announced measures will help the industry and the employees in the short term. Insulating the rural food production areas in the coming weeks will hold a great answer to the macro impact of COVID-19 on Indian food sector as well as larger economy. The contribution of the aviation sector and tourism to our GDP stands at about 2.4% and 9.2% respectively. The tourism sector served approximately 43 million people in FY 18-19. Aviation and tourism were the first industries that were hit significantly by the pandemic. The common consensus seems to be that COVID will hit these industries harder than 9/11 and the financial crisis of 2008. These two industries have been dealing with severe cash flow issues since the start of the pandemic and are staring at a potential 38 million layoffs, which translates to 70% of the total workforce. The impact is going to fall on both white and blue collar jobs. According to IATO estimates, these industries may incur losses of about 85 billion rupees due to travel restrictions. The pandemic has also brought about a wave of innovation in the fields of contactless boarding and travel technologies. There has been a significant amount of changes in the telecom sector of India even before the COVID-19 due to brief price wars between the service providers. Most essential services and sectors have continued to run during the pandemic thanks to the implementation of the work from home due to restrictions. With over 1 billion connections as of 2019, the telecom sector contributes about 6.5% of GDP and employs almost 4 million people. Increased broadband usage had a direct impact and resulted in pressure on the network. Demand has been increased by about 10%. However, the telcos are bracing for a sharp drop in adding new subscribers. As a policy recommendation, the government can aid the sector by relaxing the regulatory compliances and provide moratorium for spectrum dues, which can be used for network expansions by the companies. The pharmaceutical industry has been on the rise since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, especially in India, the largest producer of generic drugs globally, with a market size of $55 billion during the beginning of 2020. It has been surging in India, exporting hydroxychloroquine to the world, ESP dot to the US, UK, Canada and the Middle East. There has been a recent rise in the prices of raw materials imported from China due to the pandemic. Generic drugs are the most impacted due to heavy reliance on imports, disrupted supply chain and labor unavailability in the industry caused by social distancing. Simultaneously, the pharmaceutical industry is struggling because of the government imposed bans on the exports of critical drugs, equipment and PPE kits to ensure sufficient quantities for the country. The increasing demand for these drugs, coupled with hindered accessibility, is making things harder. easing the financial stress on the pharmaceutical companies, tax relaxation, and addressing the labor force shortage could be the differentiating factors in such a desperate time. The Indian oil and gas industry is quite significant in the global context. It is the third largest energy consumer only behind USA and China, and contributes to 5.2% of the global oil demand. The complete lockdown across the country slowed down the demand of transport fuels, accounting for 2/3 demand in oil and gas sector, as auto and industrial manufacturing declined and goods and passenger movement, both bulk and personal, fell. Though the crude prices dipped in this period, the government increased the excise and special excise duty to make up for the revenue loss. Additionally, road cess was raised too. As a policy recommendation, the government may think of passing on the benefits of decreased crude prices to end consumers at retail outlets to stimulate demand. In view of the scale of disruption caused by the pandemic, it is evident that the current downturn is fundamentally different from recessions. The sudden shrinkage in demand and increased unemployment is going to alter the business landscape. Adopting new principles like shift towards localization, cash conservation, supply chain resilience, and innovation will help business in trading a new path in this uncertain environment. ये स्पीड जो है थोड़ी सी कम रही, ये लगभग 78-79 के आसपास रही है। थोड़ी सी इसको बढ़ाकर भी आप लिख सकते हो, नहीं तो ऐसे भी लिखोगे तब भी ठीक है, क्योंकि जो है ये लास्ट में जो है इसको कवर किया गया है पूरा 80 के हिसाब से, और जो है ये वेबसाइट पे लगा दी गई है, डिक्टेशन नंबर 78 के नाम से है ये, और आप इसको लिख सकते हैं। इस क्लास के अंदर इतने बच्चों, नमस्कार बच्चों।